Guys, if your assessments here are correct, these are very covert weapons, aren't they? They don't leave behind bomb fragments, bullet holes, etc. They could absolutely be used by our adversaries and have very low levels of, very easy to deny that they were even there, that they were used. Is that correct?
That's correct. There's no entry or exit wound. How they're designed is to make the target feel like they're crazy, like they're imagining things, especially on the low duration, the low intensity, long duration hits.
But you were saying that the targets are most often always either CIA, FBI, intelligence, law enforcement individuals. Is that correct?
No, I said diplomats, intelligence community, and Department of Defense make up the lion's share. You often don't hear about the Department of Defense, despite DoD having 5 or 10 times the number of survivors that Department of State has.
Thank you for that correction, sir. And you guys also said that these attacks are happening right here in this city. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Can you expound on that a little bit more?
I mean, there have been some that have gone public with respect to Washington, D.C. The particularly credible ones, and I'm not saying that those are not credible, but the ones that have received the most attention on the inside of the intelligence community are in Northern Virginia, and they are particularly of CIA personnel.
I think it was Mr. Grozev said, you spoke to a Russian agent who said that they believe that Americans are using these same weapons on them. Is that correct?
That is correct, back in the 80s.
Might that have something to do with part of the CIA's motive to cover up the existence of this tech and these weapons?
That is a very logical possibility.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Goldman, for his round of questioning.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. Mr. Grozev, I want to follow up a little bit on the interactions you've had with Russian intelligence about these AHIs. If you had a conversation with an intelligence officer a Russian intelligence officer where he or she said that these are the same weapons that were used in the 1980s, isn't that an admission that they know they're using them now?
It is an admission that it's very plausible that they're being used now because the person was not privy to this particular operation. He is or she is retired, but again, the important thing is that he was serving at a time when there was a concerted effort for the Russian intelligence services to develop a counter weapon, and he believed, given time passed since then, it has been developed.
I see. So he has retired, but believes that based on the similar symptoms, or what other factors went into his?
Very, very similar symptoms were being conveyed in terms of Soviet diplomats stationed abroad of intelligence background had returned back to Russia to the Soviet Union with symptoms that they believed were caused by an acoustic weapon. That was their belief. It's not the fact that it is what happened. But again, it explains partly the motivation for them to develop a weapon that will be targeting exactly the type of people that we see being targeted.
And I know there's some geospatial data that indicates there were Russian intelligence officers near alleged incidents abroad. Do any of you know whether that is also the case for any of the incidents that have been reported domestically?
I do not have that data because the particular unit that we've focused on, they would not dare come to the United States. Therefore, if the Russians were doing this on US soil, they would have used sleepers, long-term proxies that would be here, but that is not a unit that I've discovered in my own career.
And therefore difficult to identify as affiliated with Russian intelligence.
Sir, I think you should refer that last question to the FBI and classified spaces.
Yeah, obviously, the episode with my client, an active FBI agent that was authorized to speak to 60 Minutes, talks about an incident in Key West. and most of that information is either law enforcement sensitive or classified.
Are any of you aware of any reported incidents from individuals who are not members of the United States government? Domestically, I should say?
I am not, but I will throw a caveat in there. Generally, I only focused on former and current government employees that were attacked.
Mr. Zaid, are you?
There are many people who believe they are victims of AHIs. All you have to do is look at my Twitter feed whenever I post on the topic. I only represent federal government employees and their families, so I don't focus on the accuracy of those particular claims.
And Mr. Grozev, do you have any insight?
Not on American soil, but in other parts of the world, there have been complaints that appear to be credible from Russian activists or Russian opposition leaders living abroad.
And Mr. Zaid, I want to ask, and this is a hypothetical, but I'm trying to understand why our government would try to block information sharing or conceal information that they have. And one thing that comes to mind is whether there's an operational risk to revealing any of the details of their investigation. Is that something that you have come across in any of your work?
Yes, and quickly, because I know your time is elapsing here. So I do think that is, and I agree with Mr. Grozev, that is, there's a lot of reasons why the information might not be publicly released. And I do think that's something we could address more in a classified environment to explain that. But there are understandable reasons why the U.S. government has not revealed much of what it knows. But the question is, how about to you?
But also, if I may, Mr. Chairman, to follow up on that, there is a conclusion that has been made public that it is highly, highly, highly unlikely, I forgot what the language is, that these symptoms were caused by some sort of foreign malign actor.
So the last ODNI assessment that came out in 2023 had indicated, and it, to the public, it seems very damning. This highly unlikely that a foreign adversary was involved. But if you actually look at the levels within each of the agencies as to the level of credibility that they have assessed to that is actually quite low for most of them. And there's a lot of pushback, even internally, among some of the intelligence agencies as to the qualification of that information. I'll say just very quickly, finally, they talk about, in particular, I think one of the CIA's public documents, that many of these cases can be explained through environmental factors, pre-existing medical conditions, but they don't explain any of that, which could easily be said in another sentence. The environmental factors include the following, whatever, whatever. We looked at prior health conditions, and 85% had football injuries when they played in high school and college. None of that information is in there, which leads one to believe that there's something more. The other thing I'll say just really quickly on that, the news media missed the story on that CIA assessment. They said they looked at more than 1,000 cases and they concluded the vast majority could be explained otherwise. But there are at least 24 cases that even the CIA acknowledges they can't explain away by any other alternative factors. That, to me, is the story that should have been in the New York Times and the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, that there are 24 cases the CIA can't even explain away.
Is that part of your 68, Mr. Grozev?
Absolutely, yes.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for indulging. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Swalwell.
Thank you. And I thank the chair and our ranking member for allowing me to wave on to this hearing. And I thank the panelists. This is an issue that I know well from 8 years on the House Intelligence Committee. And I first just want to say to Mr. Zaid that your clients, who you represent, are heroes, and the people who were subjected to this are American heroes. I've met a number of them, and they served their country abroad. They toiled away, oftentimes without their family, leaving everything here in the United States, and oftentimes without any of us really having a sense of what they are doing, and they were exposed to this. And this condition, when you meet with the victims, is completely debilitating. It changes your life, it turns it upside down, and if you're a young parent, life is already disorienting. And if you're subjected to this, it's even more difficult to be a parent, put yourself through this, the questions you have. But something that I've been struck by in meeting with so many of these victims is, yes, they want to get well themselves. They have an obligation to their families to take care of their families. They have expectations of the agencies that they work for. But in every single one of them, they want to share as much as possible to prevent the next attack. So their sense of duty, even after being attacked and even after being debilitated, is still, I don't want this to happen to somebody else. And Mr. Zaid, I don't know if you can animate that just a little bit as to the patriotism of the people you represent and wanting to get to the bottom of this.
No, thank you, Congressman. I agree 100%. And it was mentioned by Mr. Ed Green, the notion of these oftentimes are the best of the best who have been impacted. And I have heard repeatedly from so many of them that what they want to achieve here is to make sure that their peers, their colleagues, and their future colleagues do not have this happen to them. And they want to go back to work. I mean, this is, most of them were in their 30s and 40s when they were impacted and would still have long careers ahead of them. And they want nothing more than to put their efforts into working for the national security interests of the United States. They are true heroes. I agree 100%.
And as we think forward about, what can we do, and this is the Homeland Security Committee. Obviously, this issue crosses jurisdictions, the House Intelligence Committee, Armed Services Committee, and Homeland Security Committee. But I would just welcome from the Lieutenant Colonel, how should we be thinking about this on the homeland? And if this is indeed, a foreign adversary, using a technology or a technique, how do we prevent it from coming onto the homeland, where the target environment is even richer than Americans abroad?
Thank you, sir. First of all, I must say that, yes, there's much needed legislation. We need a new Havana Act, something that's not a one-term payment. It was a great step in the right direction, but it had some shortcomings that we're going to fix in the next go-around. What you're referring to would obviously have to fall under the next Homeland Security Act and securing our borders. Because if I, hypothetically, was going to plan an operation, I'd have to get a couple guys across our border. They would go pick up a weapon and then start surveilling a target and then hit them and then disappear. And so I think there's a larger question there that I'm not qualified to answer, but there's some long-term things that needs to be done in terms of new acts. But in the short term, we need to do things like implement the original Havana Act. Yeah. DOD still hasn't done it. They still have not implemented the Havana Act. And we need a VA diagnostic code. Thanks to the VFW brothers and sisters that are here today and for your meeting earlier, we don't have a VA diagnostic code for the 500-some DOD survivors. Yeah. How are they going to get long-term care and disability without that?
Yeah. Well, I hope this issue you see in a room that is often contentious, explosive, volcanic, that you've got members on both sides who first honor and salute the victims and want to do everything we can to make sure that they're made whole, and if they can return. And then, of course, as the victims have wanted to do, make sure we do everything possible to prevent anyone else from suffering from this. And I yield back. Thank you, Chairman.